Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Genre Equality Podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer.
I'm Isa.
We're here to talk to you about all the best sci-fi, supernatural, fantasy, horror stuff from the past month. And of course, one of the biggest topics coming out is the much delayed release of A Quiet Place Part 2, of Luca, one of Netflix's biggest summer hits. Sweet Tooth is also one of our main topics here
Mm-hmm.
this week. Plus, Isa will be getting into Star Wars, The Bad Batch, which is the
Yeah.
latest of, the Filoni corner of Disney Plus, which we all love. We'll also be talking about other smaller things: Filipino anime, Trese,
Mm.
The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, and a bunch of other stuff. Like including we'll bring to you some news of a local audio drama that just debuted, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Mm.
Let's begin with the much delayed A Quiet Place Part 2, because I seem to remember at the end of 2019 when we picked our most anticipated genre releases of 2020. This was like December 2019.
Yeah.
You picked A Quiet Place Part 2.
Mm.
And here we are in June of 2021, finally getting around to it. Jim from The Office, aka John Krasinski, he expands his sci-fi horror now franchise, A Quiet Place,
Yep.
for a sequel. And a year and a half later, we finally gotten to see it. A Quiet Place Part 2 is both a continuation and a prequel to the first film. It opens with an exhilarating sequence showing how the first day that these blind monsters, first invade.
Mm-hmm.
Then the sequel part picks up right after the first movie ends, as the Abbott family, again reprised by Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe, decide to leave their home to face the terrors of the outside world as they continue their fight for survival in silence.
Yeah.
Now that they know that the creatures are severely impaired by the frequency produced by their doctor's cochlear implant, they are much more prepared for the Armageddon. In addition, they're also joined by new cast members like Cillian Murphy and Jim Hon-Soo, who play other survivors in the post-apocalypse. What did you think of A Quiet Place Part 2?
I thoroughly enjoyed the first 20 minutes of it. Like the
Yeah.
prequel portion was awesome. The least quiet of any part of the Quiet Place franchise, but like so
Mm.
dope. So dope. I
Yep.
think like that's the kind of world building that you crave when something like A Quiet Place 1 comes out, right? And you have,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like this the audience is ushered in like in situ while everything has already been has already happened and is kind of going on.
Yep.
You kind of crave that understanding of what the background was like, what the world building was like, what the genesis of it is.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that in the first 20 minutes is like it's awesome, right? Like it gives you everything that you kind of want out of
Mm-hmm.
that desire. uh that being said, um given how great the first 20 minutes is, everything else kind of falls into a strange less than it's a little disappointing. I'm gonna put it that way,
Mm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I understand the need for especially I think in the Quiet Place one, you have these moments where you've got some flashbacks, you've got some moments that are tense and then they're quiet, and a lot of that uh um the composition of that like really kind of helps, right, with the tension and the flow of everything else.
Yep.
But after spending the first 20 minutes and investing yourself in the first 20 minutes of that, you want a continuation of that story, or
Mm-hmm.
at least I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us to have the time jump, skip past the entire first part of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
or rather not first part of the movie, skip past the entire first movie,
Yeah.
when things kind of like um tone down a little,
Mm-hmm.
I think it it just served to show some of the weaknesses in A Quiet Place Part 2.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For me, A Quiet Place Part 2 is a bit of an exercise in diminishing returns. But
Yeah.
on the plus side, thanks to the strength of its core ensemble, who are still very good, and
Mm.
John Krasinski's ability behind the camera, as he's proven himself to be a very competent director,
Yeah.
I think A Quiet Place Part Two's technical merits help to drown out the increasing flaws.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the loud opening sequence, which was flourished by a series of extended single take shots, including one that surveys the mayhem from inside the moving vehicle, kind of Children of
Mm.
Man style.
Mm.
It's so intense and expertly orchestrated that it's by far the best part of the film.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
was unexpected because, as you said, that kind of scene is not what A Quiet Place is about. And perhaps this is what made me realize that the near silent sensory gimmick, which was so cool in the first film,
Yeah.
might have lost its novelty factor in the second one. You know, plus, Cillian's Murphy, his new character's ominous quote that has been displayed all over the trailers, right? What does he say? That the people left are not the kind of people worth saving.
Yeah.
Sounds like an intriguing recipe for escalation,
Yeah.
something that might add a human menace to the inhuman one. I think yet A Quiet Place Part 2 barely scratches the surface of that idea, or
Hmm.
really of any of the other ideas, because it sets up a lot of intriguing places to go and
Yeah.
largely neglects to explore them. It feels like a random season 2, episode 12 episode of If A Quiet Place was a series, right? This is when it starts to like taper down.
Yeah.
I think like theoretically it's admirable that Krasinski has sought to preserve the economy of the original.
Mm.
No one could accuse him of misplacing the values of his franchise's small scale suspense driven ethos. Yet at 97 minutes, the sequel feels pared down to a fault,
Yeah.
with no room to further flesh out its world or its occupants. I think as a piece of storytelling, it's skimpy, kind
Mm.
of vaguely unsatisfying. As a series of, it still has a good series of, bite your tongue, tense as fuck set pieces, which are still
Yeah.
very good. It delivers on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, he builds on the first film's weaponization of sound design and space, finding new angles in which to shoot a monster, crawling into the middle hazy distance, from the foreground of your main character, and it yanks us in and out of Reagan's deafness.
Yeah.
Who is the star of this film, and probably the best part of the film,
Yeah.
actor
Absolutely.
wise, and I think Krasinski still has an eye for memorable imagery. Yeah, but as I said, it's all more of the same.
Yeah.
That's just not enough for me, because as I said, like, I thought the novelty factor has worn off for me.
Mm, yeah. There are things that I would have liked to have more of the same. I would have liked to have more Emily Blunt,
Mm.
right? In this particular one, obviously, it's focusing more on the kids. Now you have Cillian Murphy who is in, who kind of takes away from our takes our attention away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he's not compelling enough of a character here,
Mm.
right? Like there's no, he has like this crazy short redemption arc that isn't required. His
Yep.
participation in the actual kind of like journey of the story itself isn't really required.
Yep.
The man is wearing like heavy kind of like military boots, and I don't know
Mm.
how he survived so long already. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, that's just nitpicking. I think like A Quiet Place One had this amazing balance between, Regan's struggle as a deaf girl,
Yeah.
Emily's performance, John's performance, and just the tension of confronting a new monster, right? A new threat. Like that was a great kind of balance between all. And I think Quiet Place One gave us so many amazing scenes, right? The nail scene,
Mm.
giving birth, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't get much of that, right? Especially from Emily Blunt in particular, which I think is kind of sad. As
Yeah.
much as I enjoyed the kids and their performances and their time in the spotlight, it wasn't enough to carry that,
Yep.
right? And I don't know why Cillian Murphy's in the movie. I really don't. Like character
Mm-hmm.
wise, it would have worked completely without him,
Yeah.
so it's a little disappointing, I have to say. I had a lot higher hopes
Mm-hmm.
for that, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, like in hindsight, it's easy to see where the diminishing returns kind of like kick in.
Yep.
And it makes me wonder if at any point in time when they were kind of like already committed to this, whether Krasinski and Emily Blunt thought, maybe we should just do a prequel.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
let's not have it quiet. Let's have the mayhem of all of the first 20 minutes, right? And kind
Mm-hmm.
of like flip the entire franchise on its head.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll never know. There's gonna be
Spin-off.
a spin-off, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. It seemed fairly well received by the general audience,
Mm-hmm.
who basically I think were just like waiting for it for a really long time. But if for the third entry into the franchise, if they're gonna give us more of the same, I'm not really sure if it's gonna be doing that well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was something unique about part one that
Yeah.
part two just isn't.
Yeah, yeah, like I think overall this was a solid sequel, and quite entertaining,
Yeah,
but nowhere near the groundbreaking masterpiece the first film was.
yeah,
Not
for sure,
bad,
for sure.
just not great. Read A Quiet Place Part 2 with your concluding thoughts.
Yeah. Well, let's see where the third one goes. Whether they're gonna shake things up. I think like it
Yeah.
is abundantly clear to a lot of audiences that it's weaponizing sound design and just having that that contrast between the loud and the soft and the quiet
Mm-hmm.
has run its full gamut over two
Yeah.
movies now. So
Yeah.
let's see where they go with that. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
if he's actually helming the next
No, it's
project.
not.
It's
It's
not,
by a guy
right?
called Jeff Nichols. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will see. It's part two is complimentary, right? Like you could
Mm-hmm.
totally watch part one and like
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of the best movies that you've ever watched, and like
Mm-hmm.
let's leave it at that, you know.
Yeah.
But you can watch part two if you like. It gives you a bit more, but that's about it. So I think
Yeah.
overall, I'm gonna give it like a 6 out of 10. It's a pass. It's
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable. Some of the jump scares are so effective, incredibly
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
But outside of that, outside of magnificent performances from Millicent and
Simmons. Yeah.
Simmons and Noah Jupe, like
Yeah.
not much else,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
likewise, it's a 6 out of 10 for me. Again, not bad, just not great.
Hmm.
We can move on though to a new Netflix series called Sweet Tooth.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a big Jeff Lemire fan, have been for a long time. Jeff
Mm.
Lemire's comic series Sweet Tooth, largely put him on the map. For comic book fans like me, it ran for 40 issues through DC's Vertigo imprint,
Yeah.
which is sadly now closed. But it led to him writing titles like Animal Man, Green Arrow, Moon Knight, and other big ones for the big two, including Wolverine.
Yeah.
The big two is Marvel and DC. Sweet Tooth, in my opinion, genuinely one of the best 21st century comics I've ever read. Which is why I was so excited for this Netflix live action adaptation.
Yeah.
Sweet Tooth is a post apocalyptic fairy tale, shall we say,
Hmm.
following an adorable half human, half deer hybrid boy named Gus, who leaves his isolated home in the woods to traverse a dystopian world ravaged by a killer virus. Along the way, he picks up a loner called Jeppet, and they begin to trek across the wilderness together. The backstory of the world is economically sketched out in an opening prologue.
Yeah.
It details a virus called the Great Crumble, which has swept the world, alongside the unexplained emergence of hybrids who are born part human and part animal. Whether the hybrids cause the virus or vice versa is a mystery. So humans driven by fear start hunting them down. Many might be, I guess, immediately turned off by this after the last year and a half that we've had with our own, virus sweeping the world.
Yeah.
And I couldn't blame you, but the opening sequence is not indicative of the 8 episodes that follows,
Hmm.
because the blossom of the adorable animal human hybrid children shows up almost immediately, which leads to the introduction of young actor Christian Convery as Gus, aka
Hmm.
Sweet Tooth, aka the beaming light of hope that the world of the show and ours, I guess, needs.
Yeah.
um the show, for me as a comic fan, is very different from the comic.
Yeah.
It softened the comic a lot. The book was at times unforgivingly and punishingly dark, and I felt that was actually the right tonal choice for a
Mm.
post COVID audience.
Yeah.
More plague horror might have been too much otherwise, and
Yeah.
Christian Convery embodies the optimism and curiosity and naivety in a soulful performance that is very winsome, and it balances out the bleakness of the world in a way that I think works. His
Hmm.
his naivete lands him and Jep and the other friend Brett Bear in trouble a lot of the times. It might be like his single greatest weakness, but his innocence is his single greatest charm as well.
Yeah.
The bleakness part of the story seems like secondary, and mostly the bleakness part follows a character called Doctor Singh, who is a secondary character, who is
Hmm.
a doctor put in charge of finding a cure for the virus, a task that is particularly personal for him because his wife is showing symptoms of the virus. Dr. Singh is willing to do almost anything to save his wife, even if it might mean crossing some terrible ethical boundaries.
Mhm.
Plus, the sense of distrust and tension around Dr. Singh's neighborhood is palpable, and his community's particular approach to dealing with new virus cases is very brutal.
Yeah.
But thankfully, though, the show's heart lies in Gus and Shepard.
Mhm.
Convery is a natural, likable presence, and Nonso Anozi, who plays Jep. His performance gives Japet like a ruthlessness, a tough streak, masking a bruised humanity within. Their adventures, be it finding refuge or uh, that offer something like a normal family life, like they're running with that family in a cabin, like and Gus's discovery of funk music, it was a
Yeah.
delight, or them running into the animal army, who are a teen band of eco warriors who protect Gus but become suspicious of Japet. They're all these little minor side adventures. They're like by turns like enchanting and exciting.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's like that switching between sweetness and like biting darkness that makes Sweet Tooth like a children's fable that is fit for grown-ups as well.
Yeah.
And it's of course like it's without the chemistry of the two leads that
Mhm.
is like that really elevates the show. Like the show would be nothing. Like it's all about Gus and Japet and their relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it works really well. What about you?
So I had not read the comic book before starting on the TV series. So I was curious, and I did go to check out the comics after I was done, and I was just a little shocked,
Mm,
by what I was reading, and I totally agree with you. I don't think that like a direct from source material adaptation would have done very well.
mm,
And that is not to say that I don't enjoy the comics. Like Lumia is brilliant. In his own way. But I
yep.
think what they've decided to do with the TV series
Mm-hmm,
is spot on, right? Like it's absolutely what's needed in a time like this. And
mm,
I think like its popularity for a number of weeks on Netflix, especially, I think is a testament to that.
yep.
Despite the fact that it has to do, with a pandemic
Yeah.
and the times that we're living in. Overall, like, yeah, I have very little to kind of disagree with that. I think Gus and Jeb are the two main draws of this. I think
Mm-hmm,
Gus, kind of like innocence, naivety as he navigates this very treacherous world that he's unaware of or has never been aware of, is
mm-hmm,
like one of the brightest kind of like character stories that we've gotten in a while.
mm-hmm.
And it has all, like, I've enjoyed it so much because it gives you all that dystopia,
Yep.
paired together with like this great coming of age hero story. At
Very
this
Steven Spielbergian,
Yeah, yeah, and,
Yeah.
and they do it at the same time, right?
Yep.
Which is something that's kind of rare, I think. Like in the past decade or so, we've got a lot of like grim, dark, edgelord stuff when it comes
Mm,
to post-apocalyptic dystopias, whether or not it involves a young character, right? And I thoroughly enjoyed this series. I really, really did, and I'm
mhm,
looking forward to having more because like the world building is not bad, right? Like I
mhm,
don't think that we got too much of it. I don't think we got enough of it, to be very, very
mm,
honest. And the mystery is kind of unveiling. Mm, it really depends on where they go from here.
yep,
In terms of like when they reveal stuff and things like that.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, now that it's kind of concluded, I think overall to the season, got very little complaints. There are some pacing problems towards like the
mhm.
third act, but you kind of recognize that it's a setup for another season, for sure.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I really, really enjoyed Sweet Tooth. Really glad for that. I was just kind of like strange because like in a lot of, I don't know if it was a marketing push per se, but in a lot of hype going into this, everybody was just talking about how Robert and Susan Downey
Yes.
were like
Producers.
were the producers of this, and like that was
Yeah.
like a big kind of marquee thing.
Mhm,
Good on them for spotting something so good and putting and backing it,
mhm,
for sure. But I wasn't really sure why
yeah.
people were kind of like shouting that out as a as a selling point for this. But yeah, totally love Sweet Tooth. Totally worth the
Yeah.
watch. It's eight episodes under an hour each. Like it's a ride, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Sweet Tooth, the series, I think not only brings the actual story from the comics to life, to live action in a satisfying and engaging way, but
Yeah.
also in a different way that manages to work and deliver elements from Lemire's writing. They are less conventional. You
Yeah.
know, there are trippy, offbeat dream sequences that are still in there. I think it's clear from the jump that the team behind Sweet Tooth loves the comic, and anyone that was a reader should be able to see that familiarity with the source material is the building block for every creative choice, even though the creative choices are different.
Yeah.
But like like spiritual essence of it is there, you know.
Agreed.
Some fans of the comic may not be as interested since the dour and gloomy, almost comic McCarthy like sensibility of the comic isn't present,
Yeah.
but there are still frills and gut punches to be found. And for once, you know, the sanitization of a very dark story works to its benefit because of the time and place we're in.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why it works, particularly for a pandemic story.
Mhm.
Um, any concluding thoughts, and what are your ratings for this?
I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10.
Yep.
Like it's a solid watch. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to more. And yeah, let's see where it goes. Let's see where it goes. I mean, like I do feel like third act of season one did show a bit of like plot weakness, so to
Mm.
say. But then again, after having like caught up with most of the comic, I can kind of see where they're trying to go with that. So we really, really have to see. I would love to kind of like revisit it after season two is out, just to see whether or not they've been able to keep pace.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I'm definitely tuning in for season two. It's a 7 out of 10 for me as well. Very solid watch, entertaining.
Hmm.
Not too, you know, depressing, not too heady. It's just a nice little summer watch, in the way that Stranger Things was. Next up though, let's move on to a big topic. The latest iteration of Dave Filoni's little Star Wars animated corner.
Yeah.
In Star Wars: The Bad Batch, which recently debuted on Disney Plus. You know, more than half the season is over now, and Isa Fung has caught it. You know, what do you think about this spin-off from Clone Wars?
Yeah. So, times like this, I really miss Hardy. I really do,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
just
yeah.
because he's been at the helm of almost every single review that we've done for
Star
Star Wars,
Wars. Yeah.
especially the animated universe. And
Mm,
there were just times that I felt like it would have been great to have him on here to just like hear what he had to say and lean in, especially because he's so tuned in with the lore and the characters and all the Easter eggs and stuff like that.
yeah.
So yeah, for the uninitiated, Bad Batch basically follows Clone Force 99.
Mhm.
Um, they're a group of elite clone troopers who have genetic, let's say, differences, right? Whether or not it's mutations or deficiencies, is something that it's a big kind of thematic theme within the show itself.
Yep.
That were kind of first introduced in Clone Wars, I believe.
Yes.
And so they're kind of like a commando squad that is kind of separate from the regular force of clone troopers that we've come to know and love.
Hmm.
With the exception, of course, like major characters like Rex. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so basically, we're kind of like following in their adventures. We start off like being introduced to all the characters, who is voiced very, very well. All the characters in Close Force 99, with the exception of Omega, are all voiced by D. Bradley Baker. So
Mm,
we've got Hunter, Wreck, Attack, Crosshair, and Echo, often voiced by the same guy. I mean, they're clones, so
yeah.
it works having one guy do it all. And essentially, the story picks up around the time when Order 66 is issued, right?
Hmm.
Because of their genetic differences, by and large, the guys in Close Force 99 are immune to the programming that gets all the regular clone troopers to carry out Order 66, and more or less that's where the story begins. Along the way,
Mm,
they encounter a young female clone working as a medical assistant on Camino, right?
yeah.
And later on, there's like some pretty big reveals that I'm not going to spoil
Okay.
about her origin and her importance to the story of Bad Batch itself, and like kind of like a greater implication on the great Star Wars universe as a whole.
Mm,
But yeah, so my thoughts on Bad Batch is that I've watched. I don't think I finished all of Clone Wars,
okay.
right? Because that was kind of left to Hardy, and there's a
Hmm.
lot to get through as far as Clone Wars is. But Rebels, I did finish that. I really, really did enjoy that. And I think like Bad Batch is a great addition to that kind of like animated universe that we've gotten from the Star Wars stories. Bad
Mm.
Batch has a very distinct feel to it that is a lot more like the Mandalorian than it is to Clone Wars or even Rebels for that matter. There's
I
a
see.
element of fun to it that is kind of missing from I think from Clone Wars, which kind of fell into the role of plugging like these kind of major plot, not holes, but like these plot gaps, right? Like between the movies and stuff like that. And it
Yep.
had to do a lot of like uh um hard carrying for character development for some of the more famous ones. So you got your Ashoka, you've got your Anakin, and so on and so forth.
Mm.
From there, I think Rebels was as an offshoot was great and fun in and of itself, and of course that looked a lot more at the Jedi side of things. Um, with Kalen and all of that. But Bad Batch is unique in its own way, right? Like its presentation here and the tone of it feels very unique. I have to say that it is one of the most amazing animation that we've gotten out of Star Wars. And that
Nice.
and that's saying a lot, right? I'm still
Mhm.
not a huge fan of the way that living organisms are animated, but like the scene setting, like the scenery, the landscapes, the ships, the armor, all of that is rendered to like perfection. Like it is constantly breathtaking
Yep.
in every other shot, right? And that's just kind of like it is mind blowing how over the years as you've been following like the animated series in Star Wars, right? Like it's come to the point whereby now it's really like a style of its own, and it is spectacular.
Mm.
There are times when they're just like traversing like these mountain dunes and these desert dunes and stuff like that, where it's just like wow, like that that could be a work of art, like seriously.
Mhm.
And I think under with the visual spectacle and of course like all the good stuff that you get with Star Wars, with the music and all of that, like it's a very very um deep look at what it means to be a clone, right? Like
Yes.
what
It
it
does.
is, it's a matter of kind of like identity within a changing universe. At
Mm.
the point in time when the Empire is coming into power,
Mhm.
and the way that each individual clone kind of grapples with that
Mhm.
across time, across the episodes, whether or not it's Omega, who's like completely, she's other than the others, right? Like the Bad Batch guys are already, others. They are already foreign in their
Yeah.
own way, and Omega like is one step removed from that as well. And for her to kind of like struggle with those ideas as a kid is fascinating,
Yep.
and I think it's very very well fleshed out for something that still packs in a ton of intrigue and action.
Yeah.
So yeah, I entirely enjoyed the Bad Batch. I'm really looking forward to the second half of the season.
Mhm.
um, I believe. Let's see, how many more episodes do we get? I think we have a couple more to go,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So there are like 14 episodes. We're at 9 right now. 5 more episodes to go. I'm
Mhm.
really interested to see how they kind of conclude it. But everything that has been done so far really sets a good precedent for everything that's gonna come. I think like this could be a great franchise within the Star Wars universe in and of itself. Like, and
Nice.
I would definitely follow it so long as they keep up the pace with that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so if you enjoyed Clone Wars, if you enjoyed Rebels, please, this is right up your alley.
Mm.
If you enjoyed The Mandalorian and you're looking for something kind of a different, then I think Bad Batch is a great kind of like addition to the Filoni corner of the Star Wars universe. I've very little to complain about it, really.
Sweet.
um
How
yeah.
would you rate it? And it's how would you compare it to Rebels and Clone Wars?
Clone Wars, I remember like when one of our early genres, when Clone Wars was just kind of wrapping up their seasons,
Yeah.
we had a very, very long conversation about like how Clone Wars is extremely important to the Star Wars
Mm.
universe.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, the seasons weren't even, right? But
Right.
overall, I think if I remember correctly, it was like a 6 or a 7
Mm-hmm.
for all the seasons that we got there. Rebels as well, for the number of seasons that it ran, was by and large very, very good. I remember us giving like a 6.5 for that. I
Mm-hmm.
would say that Bad Batch is easily a 7.5. I think where we're
Mm.
standing right now, at episode 9,
Yep.
I would give it a 7, with the potential to be a 7.5 depending on how they stick the landing for this
Sweet.
particular season.
Okay.
But again, this is just the first season. We'll see where it kind of goes. I think there's also some recency bias with the fact that Mando season 2 wasn't that long ago, and
Yeah.
we've got news that Boba's getting his own spin-off
Spin-off.
with what's her name, Shan.
Yep.
And like that, you definitely does kind of like watching Bad Batch in the with all those at the back of my mind definitely does bump up the hype factor,
Mm.
for sure. But like outside of that, I think it's really, really solid. Like the voice acting is like on point, the storylines are on point. It's funny. There are moments in time when they're really, really dark.
Yeah.
Every time a character that you've seen before pops in is one of those moments of, oh my god, uh
Right.
and
Okay.
yeah, really, really enjoying it. I really like what Filoni is doing with like this more recent releases on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to hope that they keep it up for sure, because it's been the most enjoyable part of Star Wars in the last decade, hands
Yeah,
down.
under Filoni and Favreau, Star Wars has gone through a bit of a renaissance, and done a lot to recapture the goodwill that was lost with the prequels and then with the
Yeah.
new J.J. Abrams sequels. So yeah, I mean, I'm eager to check this out. I only usually watch the Star Wars animated stuff like after like the season is done, and then I binge it in a day.
Yeah.
So I'm planning to do that here as well.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
pretty. Bad Batch is pretty meaty, I think,
mm,
especially because you get like a 75-minute pilot,
mm,
which is kind of rare, right? Like, and sometimes the episodes run longer than your usual kind of 25-minute, uh, half an hour
cartoons, yeah,
runtime. So
yeah,
that being said, this is also the first uh the first animated series from Star Wars that is not restricted by TV.
yeah, yeah.
It being that this TV series, and if anything, I do feel like it adds more, like some shows that we've talked about who have like different runtimes for every episode haven't really used that to their benefit. But Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
is definitely solid. Yeah, but definitely worth binging.
Awesome.
Once it's all done. Yeah.
Sweet. Sticking with Disney Plus, we're gonna move into Quick Hits, which is a little segment where I talk about some of the films and TV shows that my co-host may not have had time to watch. I'm gonna stick with Disney Plus because Pixar's latest film, Luca, is out. It's
Yeah.
set in a beautiful seaside town on the Italian Riviera. Pixar's latest film is a heartwarming coming of age story about a young boy experiencing an unforgettable summer, filled with gelato and pasta and scooter rides. And Luca shares these picturesque adventures with his newfound best friend Alberto. But all the fun is threatened by their deeply held secret. They are actually shape-shifting sea monsters, both of them. On the whole, though, Luca is sweet and affecting, and does a good job at capturing the bond that strangers can build over a summer
Yeah.
and how friendship can endure from there. It's far from Pixar's best or most ambitious or riskiest effort.
Mhm.
In fact, there is nothing especially inventive or profound about the film. It is undeniably a pleasant summertime trip. Though, like Luca is modest, it's a gentle yarn. It's a simple fairy tale about the consolations of friendship and kindness and courage, and how it can provide solace in the face of violence and ignorance.
Mhm.
And yet, Pixar isn't anywhere near peak. Luca isn't anywhere near peak Pixar. And I think it never strives to be. It doesn't want to be that.
Yeah.
It's more of an easygoing, low key, low stakes kind of cartoon. But kind of film that feels like like you're spending a warm, breezy afternoon by the sea. And if that sounds like it's for you, then Luca is for you. Overall, it's a 7 out of 10.
Nice.
Probably near the bottom of Pixar's canon, but still pretty decent watch.
Yeah. I mean, like, given Pixar's slate, like even the bottom of their canon
Yeah,
beats most animated films.
100%, 100%. Next up, I recently ventured back into theaters for a screening of The Conjuring 3. The
Mm.
Devil Made Me Do It. Yeah, the Conjuring franchise is back. This new one, though, it follows the OGs. Merit paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Once again, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga reprise their roles.
Hmm.
This time, they investigate the origins of a demon possession of a young man in Connecticut after he murdered his landlord while under the devil's influence. As it turns out, I was possessed by Satan. Does not seem to be a valid legal defense, so they have their work cut out for them. Now the thing is, like after one sequel, Conjuring 2, three Annabelles, and two more so and so spin-offs about nuns and shit. The Conjuring universe, kicked off by James Wan's effectively old school original,
Yeah.
was beginning to run out of steam.
Hmm.
If you thought there was diminishing returns in the Quiet Place franchise, oh boy, the Conjuring franchise ran out of steam like 4 movies ago. The good news is that the Conjuring 3 is somewhat of a breath of fresh air because this new one is a twist-filled, fast-paced detective thriller that ditches the haunted house formula
Yep.
in favor of an X-Files ish paranormal procedural kind of story. They do actual detective work here. They investigate a satanic cult, that sort of thing. The bad news is that the quality of the scares and the story is about the same as a mid-level X-Files episode. Um, it's not necessarily an insult because even mid-level X-Files episodes were entertaining. But on a cinematic and box office scale, this just isn't the kind of thing that's going to revitalize this flagging franchise.
Hmm.
It's decent enough, but in no way makes you want to invest more time and money in the Conjuring universe. So it's a 5 out of 10 for me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Next up, let's move on to Netflix. Where we'll be talking about Trese.
Right.
Trese is a new Filipino anime on Netflix based on a comic book by writer Bujet Tan and artist Kajo Baudissimo. It is set in modern day Manila. The show follows Alexandra Trese, a detective and demon hunter who investigates crimes of a supernatural origin.
Hmm.
She is a mix of Buffy and John Constantine. She is a Lacan, meaning that she is the person who is supposed to maintain the peace and order between the human world and the supernatural world.
Yeah.
The show, in essence, is basically a horror procedural dealing with the mythical creatures from Filipino folklore who have found a home in Manila's criminal underworld.
Hmm.
It mostly has a Monster of the Week format. But there is also a big overarching story which climaxes in its action packed last 2 episodes that go into the mystery behind Trese's legacy and destiny, specifically a prophecy that predicts that she will one day conquer and rule over both the physical and supernatural worlds.
Mm.
The anime as a whole is kind of cool and interesting, mainly because it has a lot of refreshing twists on Filipino folklore
Yeah.
that gives the show a fresh edge. The gods, monsters, ghouls, and creatures are all unique, and I've never seen them represented in mainstream media before. So
Yeah.
it's a kick to delve into that side of folklore. The animation is nothing special, but it
Hmm.
is slick and dynamic when it needs to be. The action is solid. The story elements that fold in real world problems in Manila, like the police and political corruption, it's a nice touch.
Hmm.
On the downside, though, I do feel like the story is fairly predictable
Yeah.
and follows all the tropes that you've come to expect from a fantasy narrative such as this.
Hmm.
I found its climactic battle to be frankly like underwhelming.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I think like Tracy still shows a lot of promise. And I will keep watching to season 2 to see where it leads. You have caught Tracy as well. What do you think of it?
I did enjoy it. Like you've already mentioned the fact that it is so rare to see Filipino supernatural folklore being represented in this medium, right?
Hmm.
By and large, I do feel like a lot of the monster designs were great. I do like the little nods here and there to like very specific like Filipino things. Uh, and all of that is great. I just couldn't help shake the feeling that Tresse felt a lot like a very average episode of 90s X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the definitely, I think the animation lacks a bit of polish in places, and
Mm.
the story by and large is pretty run of the mill, despite the fact that its specificity to its cultural roots
Mm.
is fascinating. right? And
Mm.
I really hope they kind of focus on that a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But they do at times feel like they're just like very convenient plot devices to move everything along that don't really get tied up very well.
Yeah.
But like it's a valiant effort for
Mm-hmm.
sure, right? And it is fun to discover something that I'm not exposed to in general, or something that's just so uncommon in so uncommon in the anime world, right? Like we are so we are so familiar with, like, Japanese supernatural beings and like the Greek pantheon, and something that we'll probably dive into later as well,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that, and just having something fresh like this is cool. Yeah, it's just cool. And I do hope that they continue on their strengths for sure,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely still interested to see how they go from here.
Yeah. How would you rate it? I think I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I think, like, for something that's breaking ground, like it's a solid effort for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We're sticking with Netflix for the next two quick hits. Netflix has a lot of animated entries this month.
Yeah,
Firstly, I'm going to touch upon Wish Dragon. Wish Dragon is a new Chinese animated fantasy comedy that adapts the story of Aladdin and places it in modern day China.
yeah.
There is a lot of there's a lot to like in Wish Dragon. It's got cute characters, a sweet although oversimplified message, and it has a pleasant animation style, all of which are hard to hate.
Hmm.
Like it's hard to imagine sitting a kid in front of the TV with this and them not being entertained by it. Unfortunately, if you're not a very, very, very young child, you might find this movie to be dull and derivative.
Yeah.
The genie in a bottle story is one that has been done ad nauseum,
Hmm.
and it feels like Wish Dragon copies 90% of Aladdin in the most, like, uninspired and laziest of ways. Is it as bad as Will Smith's Aladdin? No, but it's pretty bad. I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 10. Finally, we're gonna go into Record of Ragnarok, which is another month, another new Netflix original anime to review.
Yeah,
This time is Record of Ragnarok, which is based on a popular Japanese manga of the same name.
yeah.
The series is about a Mortal Kombat esque tournament between humans and gods to decide the fate of humanity. Apparently, after every 1,000 years, the Gods Council assembles to decide the fate of humanity. Interestingly, this council features fictional versions of several gods from many pantheons, including
Mm.
Buddha, Thor, Zeus, Shiva, Odin, Loki, and much, much more. And these gods decide that after 7 million, uh, after like so long of humanity, of like wars and destruction, like humanity must be completely wiped out. However, Brunhilde, who is the Elvis Valkyrie sister, takes a stand for humanity and asks the gods to give them a second chance. Eventually, they decide of a best of 13 tournament called Ragnarok, which will seal the fate of humanity. In the tournament, 13 of humanity's greatest warriors, handpicked by Brunhilde, will go fight against 13 gods. If the human warriors manage to win 7 rounds, best of 13, gods will spare humanity from their wrath for another 1,000 years. Fun idea in theory. How is it in execution, Isa? You saw most of it. Like I gave up after a bit. But what do you
I,
think about Record of
I
Ragnarok?
saw all of what we had at the moment. I think that's how many episodes is that? So we've got 12 episodes. They only
Right.
managed 3 fights in the 12 episodes, as is,
Woo.
as is part of
Uh,
the course lah for animes like this, right? Uh,
Tournament arcs, sure,
yeah,
yeah.
tournament arcs basically. So very, very Dragon Ball esque in terms of like its pacing
Yep.
for that, and it's ridiculous because at the end of every fight they actually give you how long the fight took in actual minutes.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But the amount of time that you're going to spend watching the fights is far, far greater than that.
Of
Record
course,
of
yeah.
Ragnarok was something that was never really on my radar. Like I did hear about the manga, and it has its own kind of cult following, which is
Mm-hmm.
understandable because for its genre, right, which is this kind of like martial arts slash fantasy tournament style thing, much like Baki but fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
or like Dragon Ball Z, right?
Mm.
It's understandable because of how ridiculous it is and how sometimes shocking the art can be. That's
Mm-hmm.
for the manga itself. The
Yeah.
anime itself is also ridiculous, right? But
Right.
at the same time, it occupies this strange space where you're just like, what if Zeus fought Adam, as in progenitor of mankind, Adam, right?
Yep.
Who basically fights in the buff with a leaf covering his parts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. In terms of what it presents to you.
Mm-hmm.
Thor versus Lubu, right?
Yep.
Some samurai swordsman versus Poseidon, like some of the
Yeah.
most ridiculous things. So I did flip through the manga, and I may or may not read that eventually, just because some of
Yeah.
the artwork it gets really really ridiculous. Maybe not JoJo level ridiculous,
Okay.
um, but it looks like it could be interesting, or kind of like a mindless kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember you sharing with me that you found like the lack of character development at all a bit of a turnoff for you, which is why you dropped it very early.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, for people who are looking for that, when we get to the third match, which is pretty far in, that's already like episode like 7 onwards,
Right.
and we get to our third human representative, Kojiro Sasaki. There is a fair amount of flashback that does flesh out his character, and it's fairly interesting as well. And it
Awesome.
does
Okay.
add to his fight, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that we didn't get for either um, Lubu or Adam for the first two fights itself.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, is it silly? Yes. Is it
Yeah.
fun? It depends on what you define fun as. I
Mm-hmm.
think that if you want something kind of mindless and ridiculous to laugh at, Record of Ragnarok isn't bad. I'm gonna give it, a 5 out of 10, just as
Okay.
something to put on and like not think about anything and laugh at its ridiculousness. It's nowhere near as good as the kind of ridiculous you would get with like JoJo, right?
Yep.
Or like Doro Herodoro, or anything of that sort, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not that tier of anime,
Okay.
but there are portions in time where the fights are really, really well animated. It's uneven, but there are portions where it's really, really good. There
Mm.
are some moments of brilliance in terms of the flashbacks and the storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
but those are few and far between, from what we've gotten. Yeah, it looks like the Graphinica and Netflix are committed to fleshing this out in its totality, from what I
Okay.
understand. So yeah, it's gonna be a long running thing. Maybe it'll get better, maybe it won't. Again, I haven't actually spent good time with the manga to say that the source material has any promise
Mm-hmm.
for this adaptation. But yeah, that's basically it's 5 out of 10 for me.
Okay, awesome. That wraps it up for quick hits for me. I think I would echo Isa's sentiments. It's a 5 out of 10 for me. Nothing too compelling to keep me watching, but I do understand the ridiculousness is a bit of a draw.
Yeah.
And I do actually feel that the ridiculousness is something that the Mortal Kombat movie missed. Like
Yeah.
it felt like it took itself too seriously. I would rather this than the Mortal Kombat movie.
Yep. Yep.
So I do have to give it that. Lah. Next up, let's move on with some local news. Asiapac Books in Singapore,
Hmm.
a publisher in Singapore, is launching a new audio drama called Sacred Guardians for audio drama. It's now out. It is based on a graphic novel by local writer Adil Johari and artist Alan Bay. The audio drama lets you follow the Sacred Guardians' spirits on their exciting quest across Southeast Asia to fight a powerful demon. It's kind of a prequel to Sacred Guardian Singer, which is currently in development, which is a live action television series produced by Toku Asia.
Hmm.
Recently, they sent us a press release about this. What are the details about the Sacred Guardians?
Yeah, so Sacred Guardians, the audio drama, is an adaptation from the 2020 comic book.
Yep.
Again, Johari has taken up the mantle of the creative mantle of adapting his comic book to
Mm.
that. So yeah, you can get the comic book Sacred Guardians from Asiapac Books. And for the audio drama itself, they have it on Spotify. You just need to type in like Sacred Guardians,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll find it immediately. They also have it on their SoundCloud as well. And I did spend some time to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's a fascinating concept, right? Like, um, we don't often get Singapore superheroes, and we
Mm.
haven't gotten, in my recent memory, uh fantasy based uh Singaporean superheroes, right? Like we had Singapore Go for a while, but that's kind of like an offshoot of a,
We had VR man,
yeah,
VR man.
we had VR man, you know,
Yeah,
we haven't really gotten any of that. I think the closest was that was Singapore Go, which was an imprint of Vertigo
okay,
as part of the command. Okay, yeah, that's something to kind of get into. That was like convoluted as nobody's business. But yeah. So Sacred Guardians is a fascinating thing. Like if you wanna kind of dive into the whole idea that ancient spirits were roaming around in Singapore before Singapore,
nice.
I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I do have to say, like it's certainly going to be a lot better than the virus Vanguard, which was the COVID-19 superhero team.
Yeah,
That the Singapore government I paid some poor media, some poor PR company to come up with.
yeah,
Like, do you remember that?
yeah.
Like,
I do, I
that
do.
was really terrible. So, yeah, go check out Sacred Guardians, the audio drama, available on SoundCloud, available on Mixcloud as well, I believe, Spotify, Audio Smack, wherever you find your favorite podcast, you will find it there. Next up, let's talk about the end of Lucifer,
Oh,
the final season of Lucifer. Sweet Tooth is a Vertigo adaptation. Lucifer is a Vertigo adaptation.
I hesitate to
Uh,
call it an adaptation, but okay.
it is an adaptation, not a faithful one, but
Yeah.
still an adaptation. What do you think about the end stretch of Lucifer?
Oh man. Okay, so we've established that we watch Lucifer, right? And by and large, for me, it has been a guilty pleasure for the greater
Mm.
part of the 5 seasons that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think this is the second half of season 5. We got the first half last year, like during the start of the pandemic.
Correct.
And I think during that period of time, I was a lot more forgiving as to where they were kind of going with things, just because we were dying for things to watch in general.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Michael being introduced into the story made things fairly interesting.
Yep.
And so the first half kind of ended off with the fact that God comes to Earth and wants to see his grandson. And for those of you who haven't caught up, I mean, like honestly,
Yeah.
it's way past spoiler dates already, so
Yeah.
not that important.
Mm-hmm.
The pivot from with the introduction of God
Mm-hmm.
into the story has pivoted Lucifer into more of a family drama than I would have anticipated.
Okay. Okay.
And it's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
figured.
you are adding in like, so sure, you had Amenadiel and Lucifer, which is a whole brother thing going on, and then you add in the mother later on, and then you add in Michael later on, and like you're just kind of like growing this celestial family here on Earth and how they're interacting with each other and how that intersects with the humans here and that we've come to know and love and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. They are doing too much, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, because you're trying to balance that, which at this point in time is the main kind of plot. I didn't finish the rest of the season. I dropped it after 4 episodes,
Yep.
which is like so close to the end, but I just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
While doing all of that, while trying to make sure that you continue the police procedural part of it,
Mm-hmm.
plus all of like the extra kind of like celestial kind of demon things, is just, it's a mess in my opinion, and that's saying a
Mm.
lot given that I've sat through like nearly a full 5 seasons of this.
Yeah.
uh I feel like a lot of the characters who had great kind of arcs that were going somewhere, I think in particular Mazikin,
Mm-hmm.
just got like left by the wayside, got dismissed actually, in my opinion. Like it was really really kind of heartbreaking to see the way in which it was just like left by the side, right?
Mm.
No sort of like grand redemption story, which she doesn't need, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like it felt very unimportant in the greater scheme of what was going on, that they set up for the second half of season 5.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I gave up on Lucifer a long time ago, so yeah.
yeah, it was just one of those things, right? Like
Yeah.
again, brainless, kind of mindless
Mm-hmm.
watching. But all in all, it's done now, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm gonna go and revisit the end of it, just because I feel like we've gotten one too many like poor endings over the course of the last decade.
Yeah. Okay.
and
Yeah.
just kind of tired of that
Okay.
as an
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So based on 4 episodes of the second half of season 5, just based on that
Hmm.
alone, I'm gonna give it like a 4 out of 10. Um, a-
Fair.
and then for the whole of season 5, I'll give it a 5 out of 10 because I thought the Michael arc was fairly interesting.
Yep.
Um, as a whole, for 5 seasons worth of Lucifer, eh, I'll give it a 5. Right?
Okay.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's it's you know, you want hot people doing like hot people things in
Hmm.
kind of like a celestial demon conflict, and sure, by all means, man, there's plenty of that. You're not going to regret it if that's what you're into.
It's a CW show, true and true. Even when it moved to Netflix, it still remained a CW show.
Yeah,
That is its DNA, the DNA of Riverdale, the DNA of Arrow, and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's right there and baked into it. If you enjoyed it, hey, good for you, man. Lucifer went on for 5 years. It shouldn't have. It got saved.
Nope.
But hey, it's here. It managed to deliver an ending to its fans. I don't know whether it's a good ending or not, but
Yeah.
it gave you an ending. So be happy. You all like campaign and petition for it. So good for you, lah. Just like the people who enjoyed the Snyder Cut, good for you guys. I'm glad that you guys got what you want.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just not for me, not
Yeah,
for me.
yeah.
I do have to say that, like, if you are not into the Lucifer show, do check out the Lucifer
Oh
comic
yeah.
books by Mike Carey, which is very, very good. It is a spin-off of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman,
Hmm.
which you also should read if you haven't read. Also,
Y-
like,
y-
two of the best Vertigo comics out there.
Please read Sandman and read that soon because we are getting new Sandman things very soon.
That's right.
Mm.
It's in production. They're casting right now. Probably won't see the series till late 2022 or 2023 at
Yeah,
best.
yeah,
But it is coming.
yeah.
Very excited for that.
Loving the casting
Uh,
choices for sure.
yeah, very interesting casting choices. I like it. Bold casting choices.
Mm.
To cap off this month's genre equality 43, I have my own anime corner here, Hit Zero's anime corner.
Yeah.
Because we have been, what was the term? Phase 2 heightened alert in Singapore, which means that we went back into quarantine for a period of 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Where basically, you can't dine in. Group sizes have to go down. Essentially, I found my social activity slashed by like 80% because of this.
Hmm.
The only thing you can do is go hang out at friends' houses, and you can't do that every day. There's no more dinner meetups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I buckled down and caught up on some of the very critically acclaimed animes, not just recently,
Yeah.
but over many many years lah.
Hmm.
One of the animes that I've always wanted to watch and I've heard so many good things about is Steins Gate,
Yeah.
which is a game changing, uh, beloved time travel anime. Not only did I watch Steins Gate, I watched Steins Gate, and then I watched Steins Gate Zero, and then I watched Steins Gate the movie. And I watched it in a very interesting order. I'm assuming you watched Steins Gate and then Steins Gate Zero live, right? When it came out.
Yes, I did. Well, let me see. No, okay. For Steins Gate, Steins Gate came out like just before I started like religiously keeping up with anime. So
Okay.
I did binge watch Steins Gate maybe like a year after it came out.
So 2012, 2013
Yeah,
ish.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't watch it as was availing live. For Zero, I did watch it
Mhm.
as it came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I found an interesting watch order that someone I trust on Reddit, like one of my friends, like posted.
Yeah.
When I asked about Steins Gate, he recommended that I watch Steins Gate episode 1 to 22,
Yeah.
and then I watch the OVA 23B,
Uh-huh.
and then I watch the entirety of Steins Gate 0, and
Yeah.
then circle back to Steins Gate episode 23, 24, 25, and
y-
then the movie.
Yeah.
That's the order where I watched it, and I have to say that's a great order.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a fantastic, and like I enjoyed the show so much more. I mean, I would have enjoyed it anyway, lah. Like I recognize, like, objectively both shows are great,
Hmm. Hmm.
but watching it in that order made so much more sense. Like to stop at episode 22 of Science Gate the series and then move to Science Gate 0
Yeah.
and then go back to Science Gate 23. It's just great. It's great. Hot take here.
Yeah.
I preferred Science Gate 0 to Science Gate.
Yeah,
And
sure.
and from online, right? Like going through like message boards and shit. I must say, I think I'm the only one.
No, I mean like for me, wow, actually that's a difficult decision for me because like I kind of take it as a whole thing.
Yeah.
Uh okay, objectively speaking, Steins Gate Zero is so much more polished, right?
Mm.
Not just in the animation style, in the voice work, in the music and all of that. The storytelling is top tier. And
Mm.
way more polished than what we got in the original Steins Gate,
Yep.
right? Is it groundbreaking anymore? No, right? You're expanding upon a universe that's already well loved and well established.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm down with that. But Steins Gate Zero has a snappiness to it that is
Mm.
completely missing from Steins Gate. Right? Steins
Mm-hmm.
Gate, the original one, is a lot more of a slow burn with only like bits and pieces here and there, which right, you're just like accelerating through the story. Whereas Zero has much better pacing, for
Yeah.
sure. Right?
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that the complexity of the storyline in Zero is
Mm-hmm.
far more interesting than what we originally got. Because when
Mm-hmm.
you boil it down, with all the time jumping and all of that, and the different kind of like strings, and lines, and where they are going,
Mm-hmm.
Steins Gate, the original Steins Gate in and of itself is fairly simple, right?
Yeah.
Zero bumps it up several notches, which is kind
Mm-hmm.
of crazy. So I totally understand why you enjoy Zero more.
Mm-hmm.
Um and and I do feel like a lot of people who are kind of purists about the original season are doing that out of nostalgia.
Yeah, yeah. I think like Steins Gate, the original season in 2011, as a sci-fi thriller, as an addictive piece of time travel thing,
Yeah.
as a plot-driven story, one of the most addictive things I've ever seen.
Mm.
Like you just want to find out more and more and more, but it comes at the plot level. I just want to know what the fuck is happening.
Yeah.
I want to know where all these world lines are leading. I want to know where the butterfly effect and here and there. Steins Gate is so addictive as a thriller. Steins Gate Zero fixes a lot of my issues with Steins Gate, though. My issues with Steins Gate is the same issues I have with Dark. In
Mm.
in that, like, other than the main protagonist, Steins Gate doesn't really give agency to its characters.
Yeah.
Particularly with the little girl that is his friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just like, for the huge portion of the entire second half of Steins Gate, just this damsel in distress that he's trying to save, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I keep time jumping, I keep time leaping, I keep doing this and that, I just can't save her, like
Yeah.
the convergence lines and everything. What Steins Gate Zero does so well is to give agency to all the side characters. They're making decisions for themselves
Hmm.
and not just at the behest of the lead character, who frankly is like super unlikable.
Yeah.
So I like that, like, it's more of an ensemble show.
Hmm.
Steins Gate Zero also doesn't really do the time jumping much up until the final third.
Yeah.
So the mistakes and the problems and the troubles in Steins Gate Zero, it doesn't have like this magic button that you can fix.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you can't just like jump back 48 hours to fix it. Like,
Hmm.
so in the end, it becomes a more like meaty character drama with an ensemble where each character has agency.
Yeah.
That's why I like Steins Gate Zero,
Hmm.
and both are like good in different respects. Steins Gate Zero is not as addictive or as thrilling as Steins Gate.
Yeah.
But Steins Gate Zero works better in the first like half of it as like almost a slice of life anime. Yeah, I don't realize, like, if a slice of life anime had like an AI called Amadeus, um, as like the catalyst for the story.
Yeah.
But it's as close as to a slice of life anime as you can get, like, in a Steins Gate story. And I
Hmm.
liked it because they developed characters which went around in Steins Gate. So I like them both for like very different reasons.
Hmm.
The movie, in all fairness, like, really sucked.
Yeah.
But the thing with the movie is, right, like, at that point in the story where I devoted 25 plus 25, 50 episodes and one 10-minute OVA, 23B,
Hmm.
to the characters. So, like, 25, 26 hours ish. Like, I just wanted to see a story where they were just like kind of hanging out and like doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what the movie kind of gave me. And I'm like, okay, I'm cool with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is about the movie, I mean, like at the point in time when the movie came out originally, that was before Zero came out.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you kind of, as a fan, you're starving for like content if you haven't actually played the games, right?
Yep.
That they're based upon. And the thing is, when a movie as kind of like OVA ish and meh as it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
How the movie ends is actually extremely important in the greater universe of Steins Gate.
Mm.
Right, like that, like the short kind of like less than 5 minutes, I think, of ex- um at the end, that I we can't spoil this. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, but essentially the movie is important for the last couple of minutes, and it affects the entire universe and basically sets up for Zero.
Mm-hmm.
In a very convoluted way that can't be explained without spoiling anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Science Gate, awesome stuff. I'm so glad that you kind of like finally got to watch this. I think Steins Gate ranks on my list of one of the most difficult enemies to get into because it
Mm.
defies the 3 episode rule.
Yeah, it's more serialized lah. Like you
Yeah,
have to judge it as a whole. You can't judge it like in
yeah.
spurts. Yeah.
I do remember when I was first kind of like really getting into anime. I started Steins Gate several times before I made it past episode 6. Just
Mm.
because there's so little to go on, right? Like and of course with a lot of like time stuff, like sometimes it's just like fairly annoying, but you
Mm.
don't ever get like Melancholy of Suzuru Hiromiya endless 8 time
Mm.
loop episodes. But Steins Gate, yeah, the first couple of episodes, you gotta just like power through that because it gets really, really good after that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just glad that we're at this point in time where we get to talk about like a complete, I guess, kind
Yeah.
of like complete universe
Mm-hmm.
that you can trace all the lines, you can kind of geek out about. I have not watched it in the order that you did. I have
Mm-hmm.
seen it on Reddit,
Yeah.
and it fascinates me. So I might pick that up one of these days, right? Is one of your like Radiohead, Radiohead, OK Computer in Rainbows playlist kind of things.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to catch Steins Gate, right, and you want if you want to watch it in the order that we just said, you can watch it on Netflix. It's all available on Netflix. Steins
Hmm.
Gate and Steins Gate Zero. You may have to do a bit of digging for Steins Gate the movie because it is not on Netflix, but you can easily find it. Like if you're an anime hit,
Yeah.
you know the places where you can go. Um, Likewise, another kind of long running manga slash anime that I recently caught up on. And in fact, just yesterday night, we are recording this or before, a few days before the episode is released. But
Hmm.
just yesterday night, Fruits Basket at its 13th and final episode. Not the season 3 finale, the series finale.
Hmm.
So I have caught up on all 3 seasons of the new Fruits Baskets anime on Netflix, and I did it over the course of 4 days. Um, I do have to say, man, Fruits Basket is a bit of an emotional roller coaster ride, right?
Mm.
One of the most emotionally rewarding, emotionally turbulent, emotionally traumatic slice of life animes that I've ever found. What initially started out as a quirky romance fantasy anime,
Hmm.
ended up being this really deep, really psychologically deep exploration of generational trauma, of uh, abuse, cycles of abuse specifically,
Yeah.
grief, self-loathing, and it's just become this very deeply complex thing uh, that has just become so wrenching. Like it starts out like very cute, right? The series follows like Toru Honda, an orphaned teenage girl who befriends Yuki, Q, and Shigure alongside others from the rich Soma clan, and then she learns that the family members are possessed by animals from the Chinese zodiac, and they turn into beasts when they are weakened or hugged by anyone of the opposite sex.
Hmm.
So at first you kind of think it's gonna be like this love triangle thing between Toru and Yuki and Kyo. And then, like, it's not that at all. It becomes that. Well, I mean, there's a bit of that. I like
Yeah.
at the beginning of season 2, but they quickly drop the love triangle,
Hmm.
and then it just becomes this complex exploration of cycles of abuse and trauma and grief and self-loathing, and how you can overcome that, hopefully through friendship and kindness and compassion, and just being there and being nice to one another.
Yeah.
uh Incredibly dramatically rewarding anime, not at all what I thought I was getting in for. um it does, like, I suppose, like, one of the downsides of binging such an emotionally wrenching anime back to back to back to back to back over the course of a couple of days or 3 seasons is the fact that it does at times feel like the Toru clan, not Toru clan, sorry, the Soma clan. It feels like all the members are kind of competing, like competitive
Yeah.
childhood trauma. The series, like, who has a worse childhood backstory. You know what? All your childhood backstories are fucked up. It's just some of the most insane instances of child abuse depicted over and over and over again on a otherwise really cute show.
Yeah.
And it gets a bit much sometimes, to the point where it verges on parody by the time you get to Akito's backstory. Um, like, I know it's not supposed to be like a parody, lah, but after a while you just have to like throw your hands up in the air and laugh, and like, okay, let's see what this new childhood backstory is going to give me. And it always consistently one ups the fucked upness.
Mm.
It's hard to watch sometimes, and not what I expected. But I do have to say, like, overall, now that I've seen all three seasons and with the finale and everything wrapping up, I'm typically not a fan of happy endings.
Yeah.
Like, I like bittersweet endings. I like sad endings. I like tragic endings. I'm not a happy endings guy. I grew up like in the 90s, right, where like I kept being fed happy endings. So like, when shows like Black Mirror started giving you like darker endings, like I was like, yeah, this is great. Like, not everything can end up happy. But after everything that the fucking Soma clan have been to, that Yuki has been through, like, if this show did not deliver a happy ending, I would have rioted. And thank God, like, their last episode was just them, like, being happy, coupling up, going off into the sunset, etc., etc. Is the happiest, happiest ending. And you know what? These fucking characters deserve it, right?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely do. They definitely do. With everything that you've had to sit through, right? Like
Mhm.
for it to end in tragedy, which was hinted at the original one, right? Like that was where it was going for the original series.
Yep.
Um, yeah, like I don't think anybody could have wanted that or would have wanted that for sure.
Yeah. 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 Have you seen the Fruits Baskets series finale?
No, I have not seen the finale. I believe I'm a couple of episodes behind, maybe 3 episodes behind.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. I'm just like happy, dude. Like, Fruits Basket is one of those anime that gets tossed around, right? Like, it
Mm.
has the original series had a cult following,
Mm.
despite its flaws,
Yeah.
and the kind of changes that it made to the source material, right? That some people like, some people didn't like. It was kind of tossed up in the air.
Mhm.
But with this new iteration of it, and the 3 seasons that is delivered, right? Like I think it's really shown the amazing things that you could do with the original concept of that, and like seeing that to its logical conclusion.
Mhm.
um yeah, and it like Fruits Basket isn't a run of it's not something that I would typically watch or be drawn to. But I do
Yep.
remember watching the original series. I was so surprised and excited when they came out with the new one, and then like now that we're at the end of it, I'm just like, wow, like you can't
Mhm.
take away from how great it is, right? It is rewarding and punishing at the same time if you only give it a chance.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Mm. Finally, I caught up on Isa's big four recommendations from the previous Genre Equality. If you want to catch his reviews on Isa's Anime Corner, go check out Genre Equality 42 at Isa's Anime Corner. I particularly caught up on his big four, like the S tier recommendations that
Yep.
he gave. I do have to say, like, talking about all four of this at once, I was going to say that subjectively, my favorite anime was Odd Taxi,
Yep.
and objectively, To Your Eternity was the best of the four.
Yep.
But upon watching the finales for all four of these, well, To Your Eternity is not ended, lah, but
Yep.
three of these shows have ended. Upon watching all the finales, Odd Taxi is objectively the best one.
Hands
Um,
down.
Hands down. Odd Taxi's series finale. I'm going to begin with Odd Taxi. Odd Taxi series finale aired yesterday, lah, when we were recording this.
Yeah.
It delivered. Have you seen it? I don't.
Yeah,
Have, I don't have
I've seen it.
spoilers
I've
just
seen
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna. You've already heard the review from Isa. I'm just gonna spoil it in like 3, 2, 1. The reveal that Warren's taxi driver was suffering from visual agnosia. Like he's a human being who only, it's not like an animal world, it's not a BoJack Horseman, Tuca and Bertie kind of world.
Yeah.
They're living in a human world, and he only sees other people as animals because of a visual impairment in his brain. Insane. What a great twist. Incredible twist. Our Taxi is by far delivered like one of the greatest reveals in anime history in that final episode, and he has like jumped up across the other four to me as like the best one for this season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like there was a lot of foreshadowing going in, right? Like I
Mm.
remember saying last month, right? There's some things are not really what they seem to be. You're not really sure if what you're partaking in as the audience is reality per se,
Yeah,
right? And that was dropped in like very very early on. But to see that play out in the way
yeah.
that it did across the entire season, and have the review in the way that they revealed it, damn,
Hmm.
like pitch perfect. Like, how do you get any better than a review like that?
Yeah.
With
I don't.
everything that built up
I
to it.
don't even want a season two.
I don't think there is. Is there going to be
It
a season two?
It did end up on a cliffhanger though.
I mean, there's no news as of yet, as far as I can tell. At least, like my anime list hasn't said anything yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think we need it, right? Like,
Yeah, I
where
don't.
can you go from there? Very
Mhm.
honestly.
Yeah, yeah, But like even without the reveal, the almost Coen Brothers offbeat crime thriller aspect of Odd Taxi was already good enough to be one of the best enemies of the season.
Yep.
If you take that out, the almost Midnight Diner esque taxi driver talks to his customers aspect of the show, it was already good enough to be
Yeah.
one of the best enemies of the season. You combine all three of that, Vess is the best enemy of the season. It's the I particularly like the crime thriller aspect of it. Is very good.
Yeah.
One of the best crime thrillers in general. He inadvertently gets tied to a mob rivalry. There's a shady idol group. There's an alpaca nurse selling illegal drugs. There's a gamer out for revenge. There's a lot of like wry observational humor, a lot of seedy character studies, surprisingly intertwining plots. And here's the thing about Odd Taxi that I really, really love. One thing that I've come to expect from anime is a lot of hand holding,
Yeah.
dialogue wise. Like
Hmm.
I don't know lah. Like this is not a particular complaint per se because it's a genre-wide problem,
Yeah.
but the enemies in general tend to re-emphasize points 4 or 5 times per
Hmm.
episode. A character would just like say a point and then rephrase it another way. And then like my favorite term like that if there's a drinking game, I will be dying of liver disease already is in other words, which every anime character says at least like 3 times per episode. In other words, another way of saying blah blah blah. It's just to like repeat points, right? Our
Yeah.
Taxi is such a fast-paced, banter-driven, dialogue-driven, naturalistic dialogue too.
Yeah.
Kind of anime. It's very unusual for me. Like I've never seen an anime that delivers dialogue like this and doesn't hold your hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is criminally underrated, right?
Mm.
It's criminally underrated. We're coming to the end of the season. A lot of the reviews are coming out. And
Yeah.
right, it's not getting a lot of attention except from like really, really fringe guys who like write, you know, video essays on YouTube and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
But Odd Taxi is so, so good. And I think like it's one of those animes, right, that will easily transcend boundaries. If
Mm-hmm.
you showed this to someone who's a big Coen Brothers fan,
Mm-hmm.
right, they would fall in love with it
Mm.
easily, hands down. If you like these kind of like conversational, dialogue driven character studies
Yeah.
in your art house films, then like Odd Taxi is for you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm so glad you got it, man. Like seriously, it's hard to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to sell Odd Taxi to people, right? Especially enemy hits, just because we have been fed a certain type of anime being great. You got your shonen stuff, and once in a while you get your Violet Evergardens. Once in a while you get your, Ghost in the Shell, your Evangelion, which are all like great, like legendary kind of animes.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while you get an S tier anime of this form, of this type, right, of this
Yeah.
caliber, and it's
Yeah.
a rare thing which makes Odd Taxi even more of a gem,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Agreed. Odd Taxi, like one of my favorite shows in general, not just anime of the season.
Yeah.
What a great discovery. And yeah, you're right. It's extremely underrated. I don't really find much people talking about it. On the flip side, though, an anime that's getting a lot of hype and much deservedly so is To Your Eternity, which I recently
Mm,
caught up on as well. One of the best pilot episodes of any anime that I've ever seen.
yeah.
It's right up there with Attack on Titan's pilot.
Hmm.
I mean, Attack on Titan, like you can say what you will about the inconsistent quality from there, but it
Yeah,
had one of the greatest pilots of all time.
for
To
sure.
Your Eternity's first episode is a masterpiece. It's this like millennia spanning story. This orb is cast to Earth. It can change form. It can come back after death. It morphs from orb to rock to wolf to boy to girl to giant god bear. And then like you go through like decades and centuries with this thing, and as it grows and learns and it picks up human stimulation, it starts to learn how to become a boy and a man and a human, a creature. It's just such an elegant, emotional, epic study of human nature told
Mm,
through the centuries, featuring a lot of gripping short acts where characters that you love die in gruesome ways and then
yeah.
just discard. I mean, they're not discarded, like they're emotionally important to the orb, to
Hmm.
Fushi.
Hmm.
But like you never see any of them again. Like, there are no like magical miracle saves in the show.
No.
Once
No.
you're done with that arc, they either die of old age or they die terribly,
Yeah.
because this orb is going to outlive you all. It's incredible. Well, a masterpiece of an anime.
Yeah, amazing stuff. We're only halfway through at the moment.
Yep.
And it's a lot. Like if you love, again, like I said in my original kind of like recommendation, if you love shows like Mushishi, like To Your Eternity is in that similar kind of vein,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's just amazing stuff, right? The animation is great, the music is phenomenal, the
Mm.
storytelling is unique and unrelenting, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
In its view of what it means to be ephemeral against the span of of unrelenting time.
Mm.
Amazing stuff.
Yes, speaking of great music, another very good anime that I saw recommended was Vivy Fluorite's Eye Song. It's imagine Carol and Tuesday meets Terminator, and you get Vivy, which is one of the most visually spectacular animes that
Yep.
I've seen in years. It comes from the creator of ReZero.
Hmm.
And it follows this like AI android called Diva, whose sole purpose is to make people happy with her music, right?
Yeah.
But then her existence is upended when she finds a snarky AI from the future who's sent back in time to prevent a robot uprising 100 years from now. Um, like it has jaw-dropping animation,
Incredible
very
stuff.
fast-paced pacing. I would say almost too fast. That might even be my issue with it. Like it's almost too fast.
Yeah.
But it is consistently thrilling and it is
Mhm.
consistently surprising. The only issue is that because of its breathless pace and because of how quickly it goes through the 100 years,
Yeah.
I have there is a bit of an emotional disconnect as it reaches its climax.
Yeah.
Like I don't get the weight of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally agree. I think like I was saying last month, right? Like with both To Your Eternity and Vivi having this kind of like a wide span of time, right? Within the conceptual storytelling that they're trying to do. Like
Yep.
To Your Eternity does it far better. Two absolutely different stories, two like in terms of scale as well, like To Your Eternity is far longer in terms of what it's trying to do, but
Mm-hmm.
having to squeeze 100 years worth of story, both within the greater kind of plot with the AI uprising and kind of
Mm-hmm.
Diva's own struggle into 12 episodes, is a challenge that I don't think that they met.
Yep.
Overall, I do feel like the third act did feel more rushed than everything else, right? Like the
Mm.
pacing of itself, like it felt even more rushed than that. And I'm
Mm.
not sure if it's because they were already slated for 12, and they couldn't like spend any more time on it, or they ran out of budget or whatever it was.
Mm.
But still, like Vivi is just in terms of the spectacle of it,
Yeah.
one of the most dazzling for sure.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot given the kind of anime we've been getting over the last 5 years.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm telling you, if you follow the 3 episode rule of these 4 new animes, at episode 3, Vivi will be at your top.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, easily.
And Odd Taxi will be at the bottom. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
But then like you gotta build upon that. You gotta stretch quality throughout the entire season, right? And I feel like Theo Anthony kind of fumbles at the end a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas Odd Taxi just like keeps getting better and better and better. And based on what I've seen on Theo Eternity, so does Theo Eternity lah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like the 3 episode rule works as a general rule of thumb, right? Like I think that works for most animes. I think that works a lot of the time for a lot of TV shows as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't just only discard anime after the 3 second month, right? Like Science Gate is a perfect example of that. You would
Yep.
like in any year, if I were to follow the 3 episode rule, Steins Gate would be something that I would have never watched easily.
Mm.
But that's what we're here for. We're here to watch the stuff that you guys might have dropped after 3 episodes and tell you that look, you're missing out on.
Yeah.
And the greater anime community is going to do that, right? Because some people are just like suckers for that kind of like anime with that they got to suffer through before you get to the good stuff.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah.
Yeah. And
Did
like,
mhm.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So did you get Mars Red as well?
I just finished it last night. The final episode at
Mm.
a day ago. Mars Red. Speaking of like idiosyncratic, very different kinds of anime. Mars Red is a very stylish, moody, slow burning take on a vampire anime. It's definitely an acquired taste
Yeah.
for anime fans.
Yeah.
But like its art house ambition. has the teeth to really like keep me.
Mm,
It's in my opinion one of the best new anime of 2021. Not the best, but
yeah.
one of the best. I really admire its, again, going back to our taxi in very different ways. Master It really doesn't hold your hand. Like
Hmm.
there are some surprises and twists here that requires rewatching.
Yeah.
And the clues that it drops are so subtle,
Mm,
and so organic, that you really have to pay attention. And again, like, not the criticism of anime in general, but anime really, really loves to beat you over the head with plot points,
yeah.
so that you it makes sure that you get it right.
Yeah.
Masquerades like delivers like twists, like under like four layers. Like, I really have to dig deep to understand. Wait, did what happened is did I just think that happened? I'm not sure. I got to rewatch this, and stuff like that. Like, for example, spoiler alert, like Misaki being like his fiance and everything.
Yeah.
Like, such a cute reveal and so like layered. And you could, if you actually dug into the dialogue, like, you could have guessed it, but
Hmm.
I just wasn't like looking for it. And Masquerade surprises me in a lot of its art house tendencies, the flourish, the widescreen, which you don't see in anime.
Yeah. Yeah.
The time period, the 1920s, which is new. I don't really see that in anime. Usually, you either get feudal Japan or modern Japan.
Yeah.
1920s is new. They save a lot of money with the vampires because they basically just do quick cuts. Like,
Yeah.
they don't show them like running. It's just like you're here, then they're there. But it has the impact, of super speed. I like it.
Hmm.
Um, it lacks a lot on what I would call hype factor.
Yeah.
If you, for animes, you want to get hype in the fights and stuff, it doesn't have the hype factor.
No.
But it
No.
is a very artistic anime, and I kind of respect it for it.
Yeah, for sure. I think like out of the four, right? If anything has kind of like rewatch value, it's gonna be Mars,
Yeah.
right? Because it's so dense,
Mm.
in terms of like its references and what it's alluding to and all these like subtle kind of like foreshadowing
Yeah.
that it's one of those things that you gonna have to revisit it. And my gut feeling is that if we revisit it again in a couple of years, it's gonna
Mm.
be like even better. It is great, but I do feel like it is the weakest of the four lah, for
Mm.
sure. It's not perfect. I think like they sacrifice a fair bit in terms of like character and plot, in
Mm.
service to that art house vision of it. But it was
Mm.
such a gorgeously esoteric rather
Yeah.
anime, and because of that, it's just unique, right? In
Mm.
just kind of like the playing field that we have in today's
Yeah.
anime universe. Yeah.
I foresee like Mastered becoming some sort of cult classic in the future. Like one of those things that in 2030 you'll be like, hey, this like, this really artsy anime that you've never seen, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like Mastered is probably gonna get a lot of hype based on word of mouth, and because
Mm.
I think it has a lot of crossover to very like pretentious drama students and shit like that, who probably be like telling their super bored girlfriends about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's like Mastered's audience, and like, hey,
Mhm, really
kudos,
good.
man. It's so different, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so like again, I said like this season is the most stacked anime season that I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And like these are just four out of like the I don't know how many recommendations I made. Four out of the 12, or is it 15
Mm-hmm.
recommendations that I made?
Yep.
But yeah, standout stuff. If this is what we're getting for spring, like
Mm.
I'm super hyped for all else that we're getting. I think we've just got confirmation. We've gotten the poster for Chainsaw Man, which
Mm.
I'm very hyped about. Kaiju number 8 has just been confirmed
Mm-hmm.
for an anime season as well. So like there's a lot of good stuff coming up. But yeah, like I'm glad. I think we should do this more often for sure, right? Because
Yep.
Anime Corner traditionally is always me recommending stuff, and we
Mm-hmm.
only ever review like My Hero or like Jujutsu Kaisen, like the really really big kind of like marquee titles.
Yeah, Demon
Um,
Slayers and all that. Yeah.
yeah, and for good reason, right? Like they're really really good. They're really
Mm-hmm.
really popular. People want to know what we think, and we want
Mm-hmm.
to kind of share that as well. But every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, you get a season like Spring 2021 where it's just mind blowingly stacked, and
Yeah.
the top four are just mind blowingly good.
Oh yeah, 100%. Odd Taxi is my favorite, but all of them are like worth a watch, definitely. Especially To Your Eternity, which I think is the leader of the other three, lah.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
We will only do this when we have time, which we won't have next month because it's fucking insane. Let me give you a little rundown of what we'll be talking about on Genre Equality 44. Number one, we'll be talking about Loki. Number
Yeah.
two, we'll be talking about Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, we'll be talking about Space Jam 2.
Yep.
Number four, we'll be talking about Masters of the Universe Revelation.
Uh-huh.
Number five, we'll be talking about the Troll Hunters movie, Rise of the Titans, which ties up all three series in the Troll Hunters verse.
Yeah.
Those are our five big topics, and I haven't even gotten into all the stuff that's in quick hits. So those are five huge topics, especially the big three, which is Loki, Black Widow, and Space Jam, which are like going to be box office or zeitgeist kind of shows lah.
Yeah. Facts.
Um, like we're probably gonna get deeper into that later. I do have to say though, like I'm very excited for Black Widow,
Mm-hmm.
not very excited for Space Jam: A New Legacy because I don't know. Masters of the Universe looks fantastic. Its trailer looks incredible.
Yeah, it does.
Uh, Loki, I gotta say, 3 episodes in, not liking it.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that, like, especially via what we got with WandaVision and what we
Mm.
got with
Falcon, yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. I kind of
Yeah.
get that. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
We will talk more about it when we're kind of wrapped up with that. We'll see whether or not it lands because it's still kind of floating.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting in certain manners, interesting reviews, but like
Mhm.
substance wise, it isn't. Hmm.
Yeah. I feel like it's a 20-minute show that's been elongated to 40 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but anyways, like it's kind of premature judging. We're only halfway through. Like, who knows? Like the final 3 episodes may be killer.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have heard a lot of good things about Black Widow, though, particularly with Florence Pugh's performance.
Oh
There's
yeah.
a lot of hype in the critical community, like not superhero fans. I mean, like people from like Variety and Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and shit like that. Who usually like poo poo this kind of shit. But
Uh,
everyone's saying that like Florence Pugh is killing it in Black Widow, and I'm psyched for that.
love Florence Pugh.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see this.
Yeah. On quick hits though, I will be talking about a werewolf comedy called Werewolves Within. There's
Mhm.
Jungle Cruise. There's Resident Evil: Infinite Darkness. There's Fear Street on Netflix. There is a Phil Lord and Chris Miller cartoon movie called America, the film. Which is a revisionist history take on the founding of America. Where like what if Abraham Lincoln was a cyborg and shit like that.
Yeah.
There is a Chris Pratt sci-fi adventure called The Tomorrow War, which looks terrible. There's Snake Eyes, which is from the GI Joe canon,
Mm.
and stuff like that. And we'll get all into that next month. Black Widow is Black Widow available on Disney Plus? You think it is, right?
It will be one of the premium things, the
Ah,
premiere things. Yeah.
okay, cool, cool, cool. Okay, cool. Yeah. So we will be back next month. Till then though. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, no. I think that's about it. Yeah. Oh yeah. We for our next behold, we're going to be talking about the best films of 2020 so far.
That's right. Yeah, we have The Father, we have Minari, we have Another Round, and Judas and the Black Messiah. Here's a big caveat though. These are the four best films of 2021 that
Yeah.
we have not talked about.
Yet. Yes.
There is stuff like Saint Maud and shit like that. But we've talked about it, right?
Yeah.
I've talked about La Llorona on John Nicole. These are stuff that we have not talked about, and they are four very good films. Subsequently, on Behold 32, we'll also be talking about the underrated cinematic gems of 2021, which are films that not necessarily have like award recognition or zeitgeist grabbing attention,
Yeah.
but just like tiny little indie films that really captured me this year.
Hmm.
And we'll get into that soon lah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's for next month. If you want to, you can follow us on YouTube. Do hit subscribe, do hit like, give us a listen there. Or if you're not a YouTube person, you can still find us on Mixcloud, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll be looking to expand into other platforms. So keep an ear out for that. We've got some exciting news for the second half of the year. As
Yes.
far as what we're doing on the channel.
Yep.
Hint, hint. But yeah, well, when it's time, we'll let you guys know.
Right. Yeah. Till next time. This has been Hit Zero.
I'm Meister.
Goodbye, guys.
Now.